Hi guys, in recent videos I've focused heavily on one side of my career, namely the interpreting side. I didn't want to neglect the commentary work that I do, and so today I wanted to go through the way that I prepare to commentate on a match, how I take my notes and what they ultimately look like. So I did a previous video on my interpreting notes, and I have a similar pragmatic approach when it comes to my commentary notes. I'm quite Machiavellian in that regard, namely they are but a means to an end. My handwriting is not particularly aesthetically pleasing. I won't be winning any awards from that perspective, which is funny because some commentators have some remarkably neat, clean, tidy commentary notes, either done electronically or handwritten, and they can be really a joy to behold, but that's certainly not my case. In some cases, you even see commentators able to sell on some iconic commentary charts, which is more power to them is what I'd say. I can't really see the same interest in my notes from Sassuolo against Brescia. Anyway, so with all of that said, moving on, it often depends on what sort of approach you have to commentary and what you feel is of interest and importance when it comes to preparing for a match. I'm not a huge stats number guy. Clearly there are some absolutely indispensable numbers you need in there, appearances, goals, minutes and so on and so forth, but there are lots of superfluous numbers I find, and you can trawl and really come up with some statistics which gradually become less and less relevant. If you ask me, I prefer a bit more colour, some facts about the player, and also I try and make sure that they're as topical and as current as possible. I'm not just going on their Wikipedia page and perhaps trotting out a line that has been said every time that this team has been commentated on in recent memory, which is why, working on the same league, I'm quite fortunate in that I have a good grounding on a lot of the players. I know their names very instinctively, I know their nationalities, I have a rough idea of their age, which is why I like to write out my notes from scratch even when I do a team 3 or 4 matches in a row, because I find this really helps to lock in the information. It becomes a lot easier to access. I don't always need to necessarily look down at my notes during the commentary. I've already assimilated and absorbed much of the information that I've prepared prior to the game. But working on the same league means I've been able to build up contacts. If it's a slightly lesser known team or a smaller team, I have been known to phone up journalists that cover that team week in, week out. I did that with Parma, with Bologna, with Brescia, for instance, this season. And for the other teams, I'm fortunate in that I have people working in or around the clubs that have access to an internal press review. I won't name any names, I don't want to get anyone into trouble, but this is a wonderful resource because it means that I'm able to access all of the news items which have been written about that team and about their players in particular for several days in the lead up to the match. And then with the power of Control F, I can simply type in the player's name, and I can almost prepare them player by player. So that's how I work. Because in Italy they tend to name massive matchday squads for Serie A matches, I tend not to prepare player notes in detail on substitutes. I prefer just to do 1 to 11. I go on the basis of the probable starting 11. La Gazzetta dello Sport on their website have a wonderful tab there with the teams written out in formation order. They tell you who's suspended, who's injured and for how long, and what the most likely team is to line up. And from that, then I go down player by player and prepare notes on them. I typically use 2 resources on top of the phone calls I might make or the press review that I'm able to access, and those are Soccerway and Transfermarkt for slightly different reasons. And I'm going to show you now ultimately what my player notes and my team notes end up looking like and how I use Soccerway and Transfermarkt. I hope it's of interest. Happy to field any questions at all, and let me know your thoughts on this video and whether you have a slightly different approach. Cheers guys. So this is the match overview, the template I have for setting the scene of the fixture. You'd have the home team on the left, the away team on the right. You've got space for a league position, their next 5 fixtures, their last 5 results, some quotes from the 2 coaches from their press conferences, and then any talking points that might have arisen in recent times. This is the template I use, 1 for each team. I normally do the 11 starters as predicted by La Gazzetta dello Sport. First name, surname, the number that they have in the squad, then appearances, goals, and any notes that I might have been able to glean from a variety of sources. There are some particularly good sources First and foremost, Soccerway. So here you can see the league table. I can click on Juventus. They've won 20 games this season. That lists all of the victories they've had in Serie A. If I click on Juventus 2, Brescia 0, for instance, that will bring up the details of that specific fixture. There we can see that Juventus won courtesy of goals from Dybala and Cuadrado. We can see that players have been booked, who's come off and who's come on, and so on and so forth. We can also see they've lost 3 matches this season, and against whom? All on the road, which lets me know they're unbeaten at home domestically, and there are the draws as well, which shows they've only dropped 2 points at home to Sassuolo. Moving on, we can actually go and look at specific details and statistics pertaining to the squad. Here we can see that Leonardo Bonucci, for instance, has played the most minutes in the league. He's only been withdrawn on 2 occasions, both in the comfortable home wins against Brescia and Udinese. Elsewhere, top scorer, needless to say, Cristiano Ronaldo. By clicking on that 21, it tells us who he's found the net against. And the red cards, the only straight red, Juan Cuadrado. Adrien Rabiot has been sent off for 2 bookable offences. Bernardeschi, the player that's made the most appearances off the bench, so you could give him the tag of super sub perhaps. Those are all the players that haven't featured in the league this season. Chiellini restricted to just 157 minutes. And Miralem Pjanic, unsurprisingly, the most yellow cards in the Juventus squad so far this season. Those are the top starters. And finally, Buffon, the oldest player in the squad. Quite an old squad for Juventus. And the only teenager, Portanova, De Ligt, at the age of 20, a regular in that Juventus side. We can then see their league form by clicking on Serie A here on the fixtures section. As I said, it's a long while since they lost at home domestically. And there it is, 22nd of April 2018, that 1-0 win afforded to Napoli, courtesy of Kalidou Koulibaly's late winner. It wasn't enough to win the Scudetto for the Azzurri, but just to show Juventus's impressive run, and you can then go and count how many matches they are unbeaten domestically. These are the details of that fixture. It's all very intuitive, all very user-friendly, Soccerway from that perspective. Finally, Champions League. Maybe I want to see their away form in Europe, so I can click on Away, Champions League, those 2 tabs, and I can see they've only won 2 of their past 7 on their travels in European football. So that's Soccerway. And then we also have a great resource in the shape of Transfermarkt, which is another website that I use extensively. Here we can see Juventus's form in the Coppa Italia. Meanwhile, this is Transfermarkt. We've taken AS Roma's squad here. You can see the players' squad numbers. There's a photo, their nationality, date of birth. We're going to take the captain, Edin Dzeko, as an example down here, number 9. So by clicking on him, then I can bring up all of his specific personal data, his date of birth, as I said, his height is there. You also see the trophies he's won throughout his career. And then we have some statistics pertaining to the 2019-2020 season. So Dzeko signed from Manchester City. There's his history in terms of transfers. 32 appearances this season, 15 goals. And we can look at this season in more detail. So there you see the 2019-20 campaign, the best part of a goal every other game in Serie A. Similar record in the Europa League as well. Then we can see the breakdown of who he's scored against, how many minutes he's played, and the fact that he was on the bench for Roma's most recent match against Cagliari. Kalinic played on that particular occasion. On the far right, we can also see his record per club throughout his career. And finally, this section here, which I really like, which is his record against a specific club. Sometimes you have a hunch, sometimes you can remember he's fared particularly well against Victoria Pilsen, 9 goals against them in the past, and against Manchester United, given that he's a former Manchester City player. That's quite an intriguing statistic, 7 goals all told against the Red Devils. We can click on the details of those matches, and it dates back, in fact, to his first meetings against Manchester United, playing for Wolfsburg, scoring home and away in the Champions League in 2009-2010. But a great record against Manchester United for Edin Dzeko. So once again, Transfermarkt, similar to Soccerway, very intuitive from that perspective. Finally, this section, all goals, I really like this as well, because it lists every single time he has found the net in his career. Most relevant, the recent seasons. There you can see all of the goals he's got this season. 4 in his last 5 league appearances, and the way that he's scored, so with a header, right foot, tap-in, left foot, whatever it may be. So that's very good. This is what I end up with. This is my overview. There you can see Cagliari against Roma, a recent fixture. I did lots of information on there. I normally fill out the last 5 and next 5 from Soccerway. Then I pick up some quotes, as I said, from the press conference, and then all those talking points, injuries, statistics, and what have you. Then when we move on to the player stats, 1 per team, this is Cagliari here. On the notes, often that's information I've gleaned from the pay-per-view that I've had access to. You can see the appearances, the goals. I write out the date of birth manually. That helps me to really lock in a lot of that information. I find by writing it out, it's ingrained in my memory. I don't necessarily have to always check all of that. And finally, we have Roma down at the bottom there. You have some of the players that were part of France's 2013 under-20 World Cup winning side, because Jordan Veretout was one of the players that did that. So just an insight into the way that I prepare for my commentaries. And that's how it all ends up.